Today, we're going to talk about how to close a deal like Warren Buffett, lessons from the world's greatest deal maker. My book just came out, and it really focuses on all the ideas that Warren Buffett, truly the world's greatest deal maker, has in the principles that he uses in landing these tremendous deals. Now, the book itself is out, and it covers a whole lot of different things, 101 different ideas and a whole bunch of different concepts, but we really brought this together today in today's conversation into very key core elements that you can implement, regardless of the size of your business. Because my original thought would be, if I were you or anyone else that's out there, look, it's got to be easy to close a deal like Warren Buffett. He's a billionaire, but Buffett wasn't always a billionaire. All right, he got there through a plan and through a process. And it doesn't matter whether you're a startup company, whether you're a $100 million company or much, much bigger, you can follow the breadcrumb trail of what he did and how he still does it today to improve your business, grow your sales, and expand your reach in the marketplace. We're going to talk about those core ideas today. Now, when you ask, who is Warren Buffett? Everyone thinks investor. And if you've gone to his annual meeting, which I have, you think ukulele player because he's a ukulele player, which is, I would say, probably a pretty small subset of humanity. But he is also that. He's a grandfather and he's a father. He's a trader, which means he trades stocks and bonds and a variety of other things. But that's not the guy I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about Warren Buffett, the salesman. And I'm also going to talk about Warren Buffett, the owner. And the reason that I want you to understand him as a salesman is that in the majority of the deals that Buffett has done, and we've studied over 100 different deals that Warren Buffett has done. We've talked to a dozen of the people he has bought their companies from or done work with. We've attended the annual meeting. We've read everything that's ever been written by him, and we had an opportunity to look deeply into him. And what I'm going to tell you as a salesman is that this guy understands how to get the best for less. Most of the times, he was competing for the opportunities that he wound up purchasing. Someone else was willing to offer more money out in the marketplace. So you're thinking billion-dollar wallet, so this guy just walks in and writes the biggest check. No. That's not the way it works. If you're going to win and you're going to become the second richest man on the planet, you're going to have to do something that's going to allow you to keep some of the margin that others would have given away in the wrong purchase price. And so let's talk about how do we unpack that idea. Second thing I want you to think about him, I want you to think about him as an owner. See, a trader buys a stock or a bond for a brief period of time, waits for it to increase, and then sells it. Or he gets out quickly when the market dies and tries to go ahead and recoup his losses. That's what a trader does. An investor maybe assembles a couple of things together, tries to increase the overall value, and then flip it and see if he can't sell it for more money. Buffett, his fundamental belief is our holding period is forever, which fundamentally means that he does not think like an investor or a trader. Now, he is an investor and he is a trader, but in the deals that we're going to talk about today, in the case studies I'm going to give you in our conversation today, you're going to hear about Buffett as someone who is an owner. Buy it and hold it, which means you think differently. It means that you sell differently. It means that you measure differently. And if you're going to think, sell, and measure and do those things differently, you're going to want to follow his breadcrumb trail. Now, there's 4 key principles of the Buffett deal maker mindset that I want to cover in our conversation today. The first one of those is that Buffett says, consider many like few, consider many like some, love few. The idea is not to chase everything. The idea is to chase a very small number. The second thing, only deal with deal makers. We're talking unpack that a little bit in our discussion today because there's an awful lot of activity in the sales world, in the buying world, that is really wasted time and energy. And one of the things that you find out about Buffett, he doesn't waste a lot of time and energy. You don't take one lifetime and amass the wealth that he had. He doesn't have inherited money. All of his money was earned in this lifetime, in one lifetime, one generation. And if you're going to become the second richest man in the world, you don't waste a lot of time. The third thing you need to know is that you have to know all the numbers, but most especially theirs. Buffett doesn't come into a conversation, and we'll unpack that idea a little bit later, not knowing what everyone's numbers are. He comes in knowing all the cards on the table, yours and his, and it makes him better equipped to do what I think is really, really important about Buffett, and that's speed. Simple deals get done fast. It's amazing how many deals wind up stretching out because of complexity that's added that adds no value, no better decision making, but yet goes ahead and sometimes kills the deal because we all know that time kills all deals. So let's take these one at a time. We're going to start off with the idea that you consider many, like some, and love few. Ted Williams is known as the greatest hitter of all time. Back in 1941, he hit a .406. That's the last time that a major league hitter hit over 400 in professional baseball. And Williams did something that Buffett has quoted again and again. He broke down the strike zone into 77 cells. Every cell was about the size of a baseball. And what he did was he calculated over time what was the likelihood that inside of any one strike zone element or cell, he had a chance of hitting that 400 plus likelihood of getting on base. Now, Williams figured out that there was really about 11 of those cells that had his highest likelihood. Everything else was a much lower likelihood. So he didn't use the strike zone that the rest of the world was using. He didn't use the umpire strike zone. He built his own strike zone. And if it was outside of his strike zone but still in the umpire strike zone, what did he do? He fouled it off. Because his answer is, I'm not going to swing where there isn't an opportunity for me to get on base. Another interesting statistic about Ted Williams is his on-base record was greater than 50%, which means when he got up, either got walked or he hit and got on base, which is what he's paid to do, more than 50% of the time. Interesting thing about Buffett, Buffett has his own strike zone. He's so clear about his strike zone that he publishes it in every annual shareholders letter. As a matter of fact, if you go to the 2011 shareholders letter from the chairman, you'll find it on page 23. And he goes through the key criteria that says, look, if you want to be one of my deals, you meet these particular criteria. The interesting question for you, for your company, for your salespeople, is do you have a very, very tight strike zone? Ted Williams' strike zone is almost down to 10%. Buffett's strike zone is less than 5% of all the available companies to be sold or bought out in the United States, and some would tell you that it's even more like a half of 1%. But because of that, because he focuses tightly, he's able to go a lot further, a lot faster. So, I want to tell you a little bit of a story. Let's put this into a case study. Back in 2000, Warren Buffett was on the hunt. Now, Warren Buffett is always on the hunt for new opportunities and new deals. But specifically, he was on the hunt for a particular strike zone kind of company. He bought Acme Brick back in 2000. And over the course of 2000 and 2001, he investigated and acquired Benjamin Moore, MyTech, Shaw Floors, and Johns Manville. These combined companies, if you connect the dots, are all in what? The housing industry. He looked and bought deeply into the housing industry. Principal ideas. Matter of fact, he jokes in his annual letters that he says we bought on the really high-tech stuff like carpet, brick, cement, and insulation. What happened when he bought those businesses in 2000, 2001 was it looked like a remarkable acquisition. And later on, he bought Clayton Homes, and it looked like, wow, what a great strategy. But then 2008 happened. 2008 was when the housing industry tanked. You probably thought if he was an investor or a trader, he'd have sold and gotten out quickly. He's still in those businesses. But because he had the right strike zone, the right principles, the right ideas in place, in 2011 he made over $500 million in those combined 5 businesses. In a down market, one of the worst housing markets we've had in decades, he still was profitable. Why? Because he defined his area that he was going to try and hit into clearly. Now, fundamentally, the question happens for salespeople. Are we defining inside of our space where we should be hitting, where we should be focusing our energy? Are we scattering our presentations, our meetings, our prospecting to everybody who's out there? You know, it's interesting, Buffett talks about in his Warren Way, and in the book we have 101 of the Warren Ways, that if you advertise an interest in buying collies, a lot of people will call you hoping to sell you their Cocker Spaniels. What's that mean in the world of sales? It means that oftentimes when people go out into the marketplace, they're trying to figure out who can I get to buy from us, not who is best to buy from us. An owner doesn't think with a lifespan of a commission. An owner thinks about how long do I want to have that company as a client, as a partner, as an alliance member, as potentially an acquisition. So for us, let's put those ideas to work. Putting the deal maker mindset to work. Number one, first, know what you want. It sounds like it makes an awful lot of sense, but what I've found is that when we are in the desert, we have a tendency to drink the dirty water. You know what I mean? Market goes down, sales leads dry up, pipeline gets a little stale, and all of a sudden we're starting to accept every deal that comes through. Interesting periods of time. If you watch Buffett, he'll go entire years without making a single deal. Because his answer is the market isn't right, the opportunity isn't right. Why? It doesn't fit into a strike zone. So the second thing that you need to do is you need to define your optimum strike zone. Whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you're building alliance partners or marketing channels, you have to define what are the characteristics of what is not good, but rather what is perfect. Jim Collins is famous for saying the opposite of great is not bad, the opposite of great is good. And in this case of a strike zone, you have to find what is great out in the marketplace that you want. And the third thing is, and this takes a lot of discipline, don't swing at everything. In my own background, in our own practice here, we've had the opportunity to coach over 300 companies in building their large account sales activities. And what the hardest discipline to get is to get organizations not to chase the biggest logo, not to chase what looks like the biggest opportunity or the biggest brand name out there, but to stick inside of their strike zone and make good decisions by defining upfront what they want. If you don't have that defined hardcore on paper, then you are flying at night in bad weather without instruments. You need to have that strike zone mapped out, just like you saw the Ted Williams strike zone all mapped out. So that's item number one. Number two, let's talk about only dealing with deal makers. You know, it's funny. What is a deal maker? What is someone who has the opportunity to buy? It's interesting. So often we chase the title or the position name inside of an organization. We say, that must be the deal maker. That must be the person I need to talk to. And because we establish a relationship with them, a conversation with them, we think, okay, I've got a great deal maker. That means I've got a great opportunity. But that's not the case. See, the funny thing is that just because you have an executive sponsor doesn't mean you have an opportunity for a deal. Buffett puts it inside of his annual meetings, and he says, you know, a line from a country song kind of talks about what we think about new ventures or turnarounds or auction-like deals. If the phone ain't ringing, you'll know it's me. Do you have your disqualify list? The things that you won't do, the meetings you won't take, the conversations you won't have. As small and mid-sized businesses, every hour we spent is an investment dollar. And if you are investing in the wrong place, you're going to lose money and you're going to lose opportunity costs, some of your most precious amounts of things that you have to invest as a small and mid-sized business. So you have to make those kinds of decisions. So one of the things that we encourage people to do is to sort out who are the players and who are the posers. Now, how do you know the difference? They look a lot alike. They probably have titles, positions, certain amount of revenue, they're in an industry segment, and etc. But if you have not figured out the right characteristics for those particular people, I'm going to tell you, you'll spend a lot of time with posers. Now, how do you know? Well, I'm going to give you 4 ideas as far as a test that you can use to assess someone. Are they a player or are they a poser? First thing is, deals get done. Whether it's an opportunity to sell someone, buy someone, create a new channel or an alliance partner, because someone has a problem. So the question is do they have the problem that you solve? And what we know is that big deals get done when big people have big problems. Speed is dictated by the size and the scale of the problem and the urgency to resolve it. So the question is when you're talking to someone, are they curious or are they interested? Are these people that really have a problem or an issue? Are these just people that need background information? You know, out in the marketplace, because of governance and compliance requirements that are happening out there because of Sarbanes-Oxley, because of procurement procedures and processes, because of boards of directors, there is an increasing desire to get 3 quotes or 3 bids on everything, which means that when you're out in the marketplace talking to someone, it's very possible that they're feigning interest as a way to get their need for governance requirements met. What's that mean? A punch list. I need to talk to a company, they need to be of this size, I need them to fill out an RFP or a document, I need to come back from that information, and once I have all that information, I can put it in a file folder. Most people don't know this, but the Fortune 500 companies that have been surveyed indicate that they, on average, 78% of the time have selected the vendor they're going to do business with before they send out the RFP. This means 4 out of 5 of the opportunities that are coming across your desk in an RFP or a structured buying process have already been determined before you ever get a chance to step up to the plate and swing. So you've got to figure out, when you look at those, do they have a real problem? And if their problem is just meeting their governance requirements, then that's not going to be good enough. These have to be people that have problems that you can bring a unique solution to solve. Second thing, are they ready? Prochaska talks about a model. Prochaska talks about the change model. And Prochaska was someone who studied the idea of how do you get people to move from where they are to a new idea or a new behavior based upon where they're coming from. And so he lays out 6 ideas around that. He talks about pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and then termination. For us, what does that mean? That sounds an awful lot academic. Let's talk about it in reality. Pre-contemplation. I don't have a problem. Contemplation. I wonder if I have a problem. Let me see. Preparation. I think we got a problem. Action. We got a problem. We got to do something about it, right? Maintenance. I think we got the problem fixed. I'm not sure, but if we do, how do I make certain it doesn't come back? Termination. Glad we got that problem fixed. What's the next problem? If you're selling to someone outside of the right segment of their understanding about that problem, and they are not ready for the message, you're just filling up their calendar and your pipeline with air. Because unless they're ready and the problem is real and the right people feel that problem, you're going to be wasting your time. So the question that you need to ask yourself is, what questions do we have that we use to decipher whether or not they are at what stage in that change continuum? Third thing, do they have context to value what it is that you bring? So often now we work with companies who feel like all that is valued is price, price, price. And part of the reason is that price is easy. I mean, you're always competing against 4 options out in the marketplace that you're going to have to deal with if you're a small to mid-sized company. Option 1 that is not you is the biggest brand name. Option 2 is the cheapest price. Option 3 is that they can go out and work with somebody that they're already working with, an incumbent that's in place. And option 4, do nothing. It's interesting, in 2008 was the first time that government deals that were tracked over time. For the first time, the number one reason that companies didn't win deals was that deals did not get funded by the government. They went through the entire RFP process. They went all the way down to the selection of the vendor. And at the very end, they rescinded the opportunity to do the contract. Over 50% of those deals didn't happen. So when we look at those 4 potential competitors, unless you're the biggest, the cheapest, or the incumbent, you still have a chance that you're going to lose because they're going to decide not to do it. So you only should be dealing with people that are deal makers. Those people that in fact have a problem, they're ready to fix it, and they have a value context, a way or a frame in which to look at how does this solution really fix things for me and my business. Finally, do they have a roadmap to implement the solution that you offer? And if the answer is they don't and they expect that from you, do you have a roadmap to implement the solution that you recommend? Because even though people may be interested and willing and see the opportunity, they're saying to themselves, I can't move forward right now because I don't know what my first step is and I don't know what my second step is. So you have to build that roadmap. When you're only dealing with deal makers, look at those 4 things. Now, one of the great case studies of this would be Barnett Helzberg. Now, Helzberg Diamonds, if you've been through any mall in the United States, you've seen a Helzberg Diamond store. And Helzberg Diamonds came to Warren Buffett, Barnett Helzberg, in 1994, and a deal was done in 1995 to buy Helzberg Diamonds. He had a problem. He had realized that he could no longer grow the business beyond what his personal capacities and management energy was able to do. And he knew it. He was ready to make a decision and had already hired an executive to come in and help him to run that business. So not only did he have the interest to do it, did he have a real problem, but he'd already taken the initial first steps. What he needed was someone like Buffett who could step in, keep and preserve the quality, the characteristics, and the culture of Helzberg Diamonds, and yet provide the capital and the infrastructural support to support that next layer and level of management. So what do we do about that? How do we put that whole deal maker mindset to work? Because I'm going to tell you the difference between interest and engagement is huge. People are motivated to milk your intellectual property, to take all of your marketing materials, to ask you for proposals, in-depth studies, analysis, and assessments, and then do nothing. Because they're not ready, they don't have a problem, they don't see it. So, how do I figure out a player versus opposer? How do I sort out interest and engagement? Number 1, make certain that when you're working with deal makers, that you're solving big problems. If your problems and the solutions that you're bringing will not keep a deal maker engaged from front to back, if it's not a big issue, he or she has lots of dragons to slay. And if your dragon isn't big enough, another dragon will get the time and the attention. The second thing is talk in their language. The language of big deals, the language of big opportunities, whether they are buying, selling, or sales in general, is going to be the language of time, money, and risk. What are the outcomes that your organization is able to deliver to another company? If you can define that in the language of time, money, and risk, that as senior executive, a deal maker is going to be concerned with, you'll keep their engagement, not just their interest, but their engagement. If you have their interest, you know how you know if you have their interest? They delegate you down to someone. You know how you know if they have their engagement? They keep you in the meetings, and they stay themselves. The difference between the two of those is absolutely critical to decide the scale and the speed of landing an opportunity. And number three, you have to secure their sponsorship. Sponsorship means for us 5 simple things. An executive sponsor is willing to do 5 things for you. Number one, an executive sponsor is willing to make the opportunity to discuss and work through your two organizations working together a priority. Not only do they declare that priority inside of their own calendar, but they reach out to the rest of their organization who's going to be necessary for landing this very large opportunity. Second thing that they do is that they provide access. They provide an intro, a conversation. Hey, please help out this person with the information. Third thing, they stay in the loop. They agree as an executive sponsor that they will respond to your emails and respond to your voicemails. And fourth, they clear up log jams. Because along the way, other priorities may get in the way, or maybe someone else gets in the way, and they have to break through those log jams. And finally, clarity. The separation between your company and the other company is vast, and there may be cultural points in which you step on toes. When that happens, you need to have somebody that provides some clarity. So you need to secure that sponsorship. Without that sponsorship, you have a chance of getting delegated down the priority list and losing your opportunity to win a big sale or to put forward a big deal. The third thing we want to talk about today is to know all the numbers. All of the numbers, especially theirs. You know, it's funny, if you look at the numbers like your competitors look at the numbers, then all you're going to see is what they see. You know, it's funny, when I think about Buffett and how he looks at the numbers, anybody who's got an MBA from any credible school out there should be able to look at the same kind of balance sheet and financial statements and come to similar conclusions. How come Buffett is able to come to different conclusions and make different purchase prices than those other people that are out there? Well, you know, it's funny, when you think about the people that are out there, if you've ever seen any of the movies or the shows, like A Beautiful Mind, where an economist is able to string together the dots of a variety of what look like dissimilar or unrelated information, or potentially you get somebody who is a trader or an investor, like in the movie Limitless, or you get somebody who's in the movie that's out there, Sherlock Holmes, or someone from House. All of these characteristics, all of these particular people have an ability to find the causal link between one set of data and a new set of realities. The question is that how do they do that? Think about the ocean for a minute. If you stand on the beach and you look out to the ocean, you see a lot of water. But if you go there and you take an eye drop, and you take just a small drop of that water and put it underneath the microscope, what do you see inside of there? An interrelated ecosystem of creatures and environment that allows you to see much, much more in a small spot than you can see looking out across the ocean. Most people that are in the world of sales or investment are watching the ocean, hoping to see if they can spot something. Buffett instead takes an eyedropper, an ecosystem, a model, and looks deeply down inside of that and tries to understand those numbers that not everyone else sees. One of the examples would be See's Candies. When See's Candies was purchased, See's Candies was a regional candy provider out in California. And they were only doing about $26 million in sales. Buffett bought them at a premium because he saw inside of them cash flow and an opportunity to put his cash to work. He saw an opportunity to grow a national brand, and it has turned out lots and lots of profits for Buffett and for Berkshire Hathaway over time, because he looked at the numbers differently. In almost every one of the cases that's out there, whether you take Borsheim's or Nebraska Furniture Mart, some of his classic, iconic purchases. In each of those cases, he saw something that the others did not see. So you have to look past the numbers. We know this, that if past history was all there was to the game, then the richest people on earth would be the librarians. That's a Warren famous statement. Brains are not enough. Numbers are not enough. One of the deals that Buffett was involved with, there was an entire floor of analysts who'd been working for 9 months to decipher that deal, looking at all the various subsidiaries that were inside of it. He walked in, sat down with the president and CEO, and in 3 hours made an offer, and in 2 weeks closed the deal. Stole that deal out from the group who was overthinking because they were looking at the wrong numbers. Oftentimes Buffett gets criticized because people don't see why he makes the purchases. When he bought Burlington Northern Santa Fe, BNSF Railroad, people said, oh my gosh, you're buying old iron and old methodology for transportation. A bad choice. And everyone dumped in on him, all the critics and the analysts and etc. And his answer is he just kept moving along. Lo and behold, 18 months later, it comes back that, wow, look at all the profits coming out of BNSF. And look at all the transportation of all the items that are out there as the gas price goes up. And one analyst comes back and says, well, he just got lucky. Possible. I don't know. I guess you could just be lucky to be the second richest man on the planet. Or possibly you're just looking at things a little differently than everybody else does. So how do you put that mindset to work? How will you understand those numbers different than everyone else will? Well, first and foremost, be the expert. You could be broad. You could know a lot about a little, and that would be like looking at the ocean. But the question is do you have an ability to look deeply, richly, and be the authority in a market space, your market space, and more importantly, the market space of your buyers, the customers that you'd like to work with? Because it's interesting right now, what's most valued out there in the sales process is for people to be an expert in the customer's business, not just an expert in their own business. And because they need to be an expert in that customer's business, they have to drill richly. It's funny, one of the things that Buffett was asked when people come to him and say, what's your secret? What's your technique? When he speaks at universities. And he comes back with one of those simple, make sense ideas and answers. Research, research, research. He spends more than 90% of his day reading. He says, and I read everything about a market or an interest that I'm in, a market or an industry that I'm interested in. Most of us skim across the top, and that's why he's where he is. But he's left some breadcrumbs for us to follow to get to the next level. Second thing, look past the numbers to the underlying market intrinsic value. It's funny. Buffett made an acquisition in which he paid a premium of 75% over book on one of the companies he was looking for out there. And everyone said that he was crazy. Over the course of 10 years, that business, he'd paid he'd spent 75% above book, had made over $1 billion in profits that had kicked back to his business because he looked at the operating principles. He thought not like a trader, not like an investor, he thought like an owner. If I was to own this business, what would it be like? When he bought Nebraska Furniture Mart from Mrs. B, who was the owner of Nebraska Furniture Mart, when he bought that business from her, he bought it for $55 million. And when they came back later on and did an inventory of the business, because he just made the offer and she said yes, they found that there was $85 million in inventory. There was more in inventory than the price that he had paid for the business. But that was all right. Because as she said to him when he bought the business, she said, you bought an oil well. You didn't buy a piece of land. And that's what one's looking for, an owner who sells to a client that will produce revenue for them for years and years and years, is the idea and the opportunity to buy an oil well, not to buy a piece of land. And the third thing is that if you're going to do the land or the oil well, make certain that you've done all the investigation, all the homework, and all the research to understand what you're really getting into. Fourth point I wanted to make out of our conversation today is that simple deals get done fast. Now, when I say simple deals get done fast, Buffett is famous for being able to go into a business and make an offer and close a deal in less than a week. Now, due diligence extends sometimes beyond that 1 week period of time, but it's because he's done all of his homework before he goes to the meeting, not after he goes to the meeting. Too often, when we go to do our selling, to our first meeting, we go there and say, hey, here's what I do. Here's the products and services that I offer. Do you need that? What's your pain? What keeps you up at night? If you had a magic wand, what would you use it to go ahead and change inside of your business? That's lazy selling. That's the kind of selling that gets you thrown out of offices. Because people expect, if you're going to be an expert and a value provider, that you show up prepared. And part of making deals happen faster and making them simpler has to do with your preparation in advance. So follow this line of logic as you start to think about your larger sales, your larger opportunities, and your larger deals. First thing is that bigger deals typically mean there are going to be more people, more interrelated departments of people are going to be a part of that conversation. They're going to come together and they're going to need to either bless it, deny it, challenge it along the way to determine whether our systems will work, our cultures will mesh, whether or not our product cycles and our marketing schema are all going to fit together. So I've got more people. If I'm going to do a bigger deal, I'm going to get more people. Well, if I've got more people, I've immediately added more complexity. Anyone in here who's ever been in a staff meeting knows that the staff meeting goes longer and gets on more rabbit trails the more people that you add. People do not normally make things faster. When you add complexity, you add fear. Because the uncertain, the unknown, and the unknowable becomes the barrier to your opportunity to get the next deal and to move things along. So if bigger deals mean more people means more complexity means more fear, then fear is what slows down deals. If you want to win in deals, simplicity equals confidence. Confidence equals speed. How do you make things simple that are complex? It's interesting. In Scott Fetzer, which was a deal that Buffett did back in 1984, he bought a dog's breakfast of companies. There were 20 companies in there. One of the companies makes industrial products, gauges, instruments, and power systems. Another one of the companies is the World Book Encyclopedia Company. Another company makes Ginsu knives. How are these all related? Remember my story from earlier about the analysts all sitting for 9 months trying to pick apart what the value was of the company? This was the deal. As a matter of fact, Ivan Boesky, famous from a variety of kind of the Wall Street movie and other kinds of nefarious activities, was actually trying to do a takeover as part of an ESOP program. And he had that entire group of people doing all of those analysis, trying to come up with the absolute optimum price that they were going to offer to get the deal done. And the deal fell apart because they couldn't figure it out. With all these different businesses, they couldn't put together the risk pro forma and all the valuation pro forma. Buffett comes in, makes the deal in less than 2 weeks, makes the deal in 3 hours, finishes the deal in less than 2 weeks, pays a premium in the marketplace for it, and over that time, guess what? That's our $1 billion that he makes back on the business that was there. Why? Why? Because when he walked in, he had done all of his homework on the underlying business issues that were involved in the operation of these 20 plus different entities. And he had figured out what the operational performance history was of all of these as an aggregate. And because of that aggregate and the benefit of that aggregate, he came back and was able to make a simple offer. And because of that simple offer, he got a quick deal. If you want to make large sales happen, don't become the barrier to those large sales by adding unnecessary complexity into the conversation. You know, I like Buffett's quote on this in Warren Way number 45. There seems to be some perverse human characteristics that likes to make easy things difficult. There's a whole lot out there on negotiating and negotiating strategy. I don't disparage that training, but I will say the inside of the Buffett model, the second richest man on the planet, one of the things that he simply says is, I don't bluff. Bluffing is complex. It involves a series of activities of playing, now you see me, now you don't. Did I mean it when I said something or did I not? It doesn't develop a great trusting relationship. His answer is, over time, you either get a reputation as somebody who bluffs or you get a reputation as somebody who doesn't. And by not bluffing, when I make a statement, then that people know that's going to stand. He's also famous for having offered someone, he talked to someone about buying their business. And the person said, okay, and he said, listen, one of my criteria is you got to have a price. Tell me what your price is. Guy says, well, $100 million. Buffett says, sold. Guy looks at him and says, well, how about 110? Because we just did a deal. Do you have another company? Simple question, simple answer. If you're ready, victory favors the prepared. And Buffett is always ready. So he doesn't bluff as a way to go ahead and set forward a strategy. Rather, he sets forward what his strategy is before he's in the situation that requires him to bluff. So how do we put this to work? How do we make this work in small and mid-sized companies? Well, first, think and act like you're going to win. You know, the lack of confidence that your strategy will work, that your research is adequate, that your time and focus has been appropriate, drives people to scatter their efforts across lots and lots of sales, lots and lots of prospects, lots and lots of opportunities. But if you've done your preparation, you've done your homework, and you're ready, you can focus in on the facts of that particular opportunity, and then you can put forward a strategy that's going to allow you to win. What's the difference between hoping you're going to win and acting like you're going to win? Is that you are ready and focused deeply on that one place instead of looking at 20 things on the side simultaneously. Second thing is, you want to make certain that you've got a map for execution. In almost all of Buffett's deals, the opportunity moves forward rapidly because he doesn't want any interrupt in the profit flow. Think about that. When you're selling to an organization, you're selling to a company, one of their greatest barriers, their greatest fears is, what's the transition map going to look like? They may be excited about where we're going. They may be very pained where they are now. But how do I get from here to there rapidly? The responsibility for that map of execution is yours. And the idea that nothing of fundamental principles that's going to support your customers, your employees, or any of your stakeholders is going to be interrupted is absolutely critical to the speed of the deal. That's what makes things simpler. And finally, keep it simple inside of your own company and don't second guess yourself. If you've made a strategy and a decision and you've done all of your homework, push through or step out. Now, Buffett has over 100 deals that are on the acquisition side, and he has sold the vast majority of those at a price lower than what the marketplace would have offered that particular owner who was selling their business. He sold them that they should come and do business with him. He sold them that they should bring their company into the Berkshire Hathaway fold. And most of his purchases were for cash, not stock. So it wasn't a trading of a lower value stock for an anticipated value of a higher value stock at Berkshire Hathaway. It was a cash buy. Along the way, he killed a lot of deals. A lot of deals because he didn't second guess himself. He knew what winning looked like before he got there. And if the deal couldn't be done in the way that he wanted to get it done, he moved on to another deal. To the point that sometimes he'd go a year, 2 years, 3 years, and he didn't do any deals because he didn't see any opportunities out in the marketplace that fit into his strike zone. So let's put it all together. First, if you want to win, you have to define and design your strike zone. Step one. Step two, don't waste your time with the non-deal makers. If they don't have those 4 criteria that I talked about earlier, if they don't have a problem, if they're not ready, then those are not the kinds of people that you need to be spending your time with. Because in the end, they'll soak out your intellectual property. They'll become more market knowledgeable. They'll take that back to the incumbent, the largest brand name or the cheapest price, and get what they want from the information that you provided them and give you nothing. Third thing, do more homework than you think you need to. Too often, our answer is I'm going to invest just a little bit of time and a little bit of energy in advance of my meeting. And then I'm going to figure out whether the meeting was worthwhile. And if the meeting was worthwhile, then I'll go back and do a lot of homework. The fact of the matter is once you're in front of that particular person, that deal maker, you have to be in a situation that you can make the deal, which means all the homework needs to be done up front. Otherwise, you're adding layers of complexity. And finally, be ready to win and ready to move. Your organization has to be behind you and ready to move forward. So I leave you with this final question. Is your greatest deal ever, the biggest deal you've ever made, in your past, or is it in your future? Do you have that roadmap to your Warren Buffett deal? I'll take some questions now. Talk a little bit about Buffett in application. So we'll take some questions. So if you could just tell me, raise your hand when you're ready for a question. All right. Yes.
On correlation with Buffett's how to buy a company, I think you're talking about target filter. You'll expand a little bit on that?
Sure. The idea of a strike zone, any organization who's trying to improve their sales process from front to back, starts off with the idea, think about it like manufacturing. If you're going to manufacture something, you quality control it from the very, very front, right from the materials, the components, the raw stuff that you bring in that's going to go into your production line. So you don't want to spend any time using inferior materials, inferior components, inferior items. So you have to have some sort of a very rigorous process that scores all of your leads on the way in and determines what's our likelihood to win. Because if you think about it, every step in your sales process from that point forward is like spending money. It could be opportunity cost, it could be people's time, it could be prototypes, drawings, it could be a variety of different activities. And if you're moving through that process and you're moving bad prospects, bad opportunities through that prospect, you're wasting a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money. And so if you want to improve your process, the first place to start on improving your back-end conversion is to improve what you're putting into your sales process. Start at the front end. Weed out those low likelihood opportunities. Most organizations feel like they have a qualifying filter. What they really need is a disqualifying filter. What is everything that's outside of my Ted Williams strike zone? And that would help people with their businesses to increase their conversion. Somebody else?
Question. You've talked a lot about how to close a deal once you get in the door, and Warren Buffett easily gets in the door now because he's got a great reputation, he's been highly successful. But is there anything that you've gleaned from the early days of Warren Buffett that helps to inform on the best way to get in the door before you've created that reputation?
So the question is there a way to secure executive sponsors and secure executive interest and engagement early on if you're not carrying around $1 billion wallet and a worldwide reputation? Absolutely. You start off with their market, their industry, their problems. Most of the time when folks call or email or do a marketing campaign, what do they talk about? Here's the products that we offer. Here's the services that we do. Here's the people we provide them for. This is why we're special. This is why, here's our unique value proposition, right? We've all been trained to look for a unique value proposition, which means we are talking about us. Talking about us. When you call someone up and say, look, my organization helps companies to solve 3 baseline business problems at your level. We help you to fix this, and fix this. I'm contacting you to find out if you have any one of those 3 problems. And you're talking in the language of their industry, in the language of their business, then you're going to get through. Or the likelihood that you'll get through goes way up. When you call up and say, hi, this is Tom Searcy, and we're a great provider of XYZ services, you're going to get disconnected. Because you're not talking to me about my problems. You're talking to me about your services. And I'm just spending my time as a senior executive or an owner inside of a business focusing on my problems. And if you're going to get into my door, you better come there knowing what my problems are. Or at least have enough context to ask me the right questions to hone in on those problems. Other questions?